Set, Hika, Seya. Greetings, everyone. This is Chief Menoir once again, uh, coming to you with another update by request because I wouldn't say I wasn't aware, but I wasn't aware that it was so bad, right? I wasn't aware that a lot of people on the island, even though we out here 9 years now, 8 years to be flush, right? A lot of people to know the difference in dynamic, uh, the different types of people, um, and the history on this island, right? So I would explain this to you. It was done like this deliberately so that it's an identity heist, it's an identity theft, it's a grand scheme, right? And so obviously they wouldn't want you to know about it. So basically this the after our history was scrubbed, right? Or an attempt to scrub our history was done. They implemented other things in order to mask the remnants of what were, right? However, in this day and time, obviously, rocks, other artifacts, gold, guanine, all these type of artifacts, it can swap out just like that. And as I told you all, we yet still be working on this project. There are heads here on this land similar to the heads in La Venta and I think is Tres Zapotes or something like that in Mexico, where the quote unquote Olmecs heads are. There are heads here as well. When we have that information on camera put together coherently, we bring it to you. But for the most part, about the races and the identities of people on this land and the chronology and timeline, it is a real, it's a real not talked about topic. It's something that is not brought to the forefront. Nobody will dig it up and that type of stuff because people don't like saying the quiet part out loud. However, I do not business, right? The truth is truth and it should not be an offense, right? It is an offense in this day and time, but it should not be, right? So with no further ado, I'd like to dissect something here that a lot of you are familiar with. A lot of you, these individuals, Hijack was the first hijackers of the indigenous, and we'd like to point out what they themselves say about themselves, right? And in there you would see the they're telling on themselves basically, right? So a lot of you people here on the land familiar with this guy, right? This guy is called Ricardo Barrat Hernandez, right? His Hernandez came later on, right? But this is what he's called, right? Now, I have been begged diligently by an elder and one of his classmates to do a piece on him so people could see that he's an imposter, right? So let's just read the article and we'll go through it from there. This article is look like the 28th of October 2017. Amerindians related to East Indians, right? I think it says ICDN or something like that. Probably some citation. Amerindians related to East Indians. It has his picture up on the front here. And help preserve our heritage, Ricardo Barrat Hernandez. At the bottom it says, Ricardo Barrat Hernandez is the chief of the Santa Rosa First Peoples in Trinidad and Tobago. His Hindi middle name is both symbolic and real, and that is not his middle name. Ricardo Barrat is his last name, and according to the elder and his classmate, he took the Hernandez from his Venezuelan wife who came across here, right? So he has no Hernandez in his bloodline at all. And men who sat next to him in class said that his two parents are directly linked to the Fatal Razak. I think his father is somewhat kind of mixed like a Douglas or something like that, but it's not even as visible according to people who went to school with him, right? But that is neither here or there. We could see the presentation of the being, and this is not who we are, right? But let's go further. His Hindi middle name is both symbolic and real. So hear this. The English translation for Bharat is India. In some rendition in my research, I saw brother, right? From where some of Ricardo's ancestors came 1700 years ago. Right. If you're familiar with a guy called Graham Hancock or Randall Carson and these guys and them, they talk about a younger Dryas effect. Um, no, this will go above layman for a little bit, but I'm coming back down to layman. What it basically is the ending of the ice age when the places were froze over. Some Hindus and some Siberians, they crossed the Bering Strait and came all the way down from the Yucatan Peninsula down to Mexico and then into the Caribbean, right? This happened a couple thousand years ago, as they state in here. And it's not like I have a vendetta against them or anything like that. It's telling you here that his ancestors, they say in some of his ancestors, so I guess his father, who's probably has a little curl in his hair, were mixed down. Cause when they came in 1845, and some of the indentured workers find the work was too dread, and the sun was too hot. They left the plantation and went to the hills where my ancestors was, right? And they mixed in with them. So Douglas is not a new thing. Douglas around long time, right? Since 1800s it are Douglas, right? And that's because those who didn't want it to go through that contract, they breached the contract and they went into the bush to live with us, right? Like just the reality. Go talk to your elders, go talk to the older ones and them, and they would tell you this, right? So the younger dryas effect froze over the water, right? That dry ice frozen era, right? And they use that opportunity still to date. When they had the border closed in United States, CNN and some other news reporter picked up 2, 3, 4 Hindus, and they were asking them how did they reach across the border to Mexico and that type of stuff, and they said they walked. They did the motion, they walked. They wasn't understanding them in Hindi, and then they do the motion, we walk. They walk from India to blouse and skirt, cross the border in the United States of America in the north. So that was just recently. It had no younger dryas effect. The place wasn't froze over, nothing like that. These men them still walk and come. Right? So that's just the reality. So let me just put everything in perspective, people. Time is not what they're telling you it is. Basically, they're trying to crunch the timeline to make you think things, or they're trying to over expand the timeline in certain areas and crunch it in other areas. So it's a real dread trick they're playing, and this is the reason why people like me had to come out here and do this, right? So they came across, as he is telling you here, they came across the Bering Strait and they mixed in with the copper tone, woolly head people here all those years ago. Now, this will carry us back into some tribal law. But Fernando Zarco Salvador, who they call him Christopher Columbus, who has another name as Cristobal Colon also, he is a guy belong to the crypto Muslims and the crypto Jews who invaded, right? I kind of drifting because all the stories tie together and I can't just dissect one without touching the other. But basically, these crypto Muslims and crypto Jews came across because of an older link they had with us in the Americas with their ancestors and the what we want to call it, holy men, just to keep it on a layman terms, but men who were high in intellectual capacity in the spirit world, they and us had a link in before 17,000 years ago, long before that, right? Obviously, I just given you a tribal law, so you just had to bear with me a bit. This is how these later renditions, Isabella and Ferdinand and the Spanish and the beings who was running from the Spanish Inquisition, this is how they knew about the Americas because of our older link. And so when they was under pressure in Spain, and Ferdinand and Elizabeth and the rest of them had enough of the blood drinking and the wow, beautiful. Eating little babies and that type of stuff, right? When they was fed up of that, it came to the Spanish Inquisition. And under the Inquisition, these dirty Moors had to run. Now, Isabel and Ferdinand was part of it too, right? So don't get it twisted. But they ran and came across here because they was running from the Inquisition. And when they come across here, the reason why they run and come across here is because they knew about here from before, right? It's the same reason why Fernando Zarco Salvador Christopher Columbus was coming here, because they heard about the beings here, and everything will go back into bloodline when we decide to put that out. I ain't deciding to put it out yet, but everything has to do with bloodline, and that's the reason why they came in the first place, right? So when Fernando Zarco came across here, they already had the knowledge that people were coming here already. It was a big thing in ancient times because we were type 1, we were the top civilization on the planet. So everybody used to leave from where it was to come here. So again, following that pattern, Fernando Zarco Salvador, Cristobal Colon, aka Christopher Columbus, came under that guise to investigate what was happening here, right? After all, Christopher Columbus had not really made a mistake in calling the natives Indians. Like I tell you in the last video, he didn't say Indians, he said Indio, because Christopher Columbus and them coming from, they were what you call crypto-Muslims and crypto-Jews. They were operating on the Latin side of things, right? That is why we do identify with Taino. Taino is a Latin word given by these invaders, right? Basically. Right. So when Christopher Columbus came, they came with that knowledge, knowing that the powerful bloodline that ran the world is in the Americas. And don't fall for the hijack of the story that he was looking for India and ended up in the Americas. Let me tell you something. Back in that time, as I say it again, that landmass was not called India. It was called Hindustan and Indostan in different renditions, but never India, right? The Americas was called Superior India. Across on the Asian side, including present-day India, they were called Inferior India, and not because of the Hindus that was living there. Because the original people in the land that they now call India look like me. They're still living up there in the mountains. They're still up in that land there right now. Right now as we speak, in what is called India today. And they are the original people for that land. These traits here, dark-skinned beings, came from outside of the planet, from different, and I know this is going to go above every layman head, but since the government into disclosing aliens and Trump and them onto all this shit and all that, let me get real and carry the conversation forward. These beings, these Hindu beings, not even indigenous to the planet, they from Nirvana, Procyon, Aldebaran, there's some star, Andromeda, right? These are where they came from. Based on some of our ancestors, they got the loophole to come into the planet, and this is where they've been. They landed in that zone there, what they call in India today, right? They landed there, and from there they started to take over, right? Some disagreeable ones, right? So that whole story, I mean, I drift out on part of tribal law, but it is included into what we're dealing with here today. There are people in that land right now that they call in India looks exactly like me. And I will go as far as as to say that we are now uncovering evidence that when they were doing their transportation, they took Nijis like me from here and carried them to India. Right? We'll get that info in the next time. But for the topic here, we're just touching on all these things are connected. But they themselves are telling on themselves to tell you who they are. Boom. So they're saying here now, after all, Christopher Columbus had really make a mistake, tra la 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 la, when he came to the Caribbean in 1492. Indeed, the indigenous people who Columbus described as having brown skin and straight black hair were actually descendants of ancient East Indians in the America, and that is true. Because they wanted to link with these tribes with the straight hair, because they find the ones with this type of hair was too warlike. And so the Spanish called these guys here Guaitos y Amigos, Christians and friends of the Spanish. That is what these straight here mixed down invaders were called. And that is why tribal wars broke out back then, because the mixed ones, or the tribes who accepted these who came over the Bering Strait, it started to have a conflict between those who look like me and those who allowed those from the Bering Strait to join the bloodline. We had a problem with that. And that's why you'd hear, oh, it had tribal wars and they was killing this one and killing that one. That's because some tribes sell out long before anybody else input. Right? Since the Younger Jazz effect and coming across the Bering Strait, tribes was coasting on tribes allowing these people to join them. So that's where the tribal war started, long before Christopher Columbus come in. So when he came in, they had the intelligence on which tribes to go to and which tribes not to go to. Right? And that's why there's a group of them, the Nipoyo, the Sipoya, and what's the Nipoyo, the Sipoya, and it's an offshoot of the Aruakai. They were considered Guaitos y Amigos, friends and Christians of the Christian friends of the Spanish. That is why they were considered that, because they were already sold out. By allowing those who came across the Bering Strait and the Yucatan Peninsula to come down here and to join these tribes, they already sold out. And the tribes, the Tamanaks, the Arawakai, the main Arawakai tribe, the Chaymas and the Kumanagotes were copper tone, woolly head, nappy. Oh, let me get this now. Long time, right? When I was going to school in the 80s, right? It was a this to have nappy here. It was a this to have dada here. And it was a this to have what they call coarse here. Right? You see, those three types are here. They represent the original bloodline on the land. Nappy here, coarse, rough here like wire, like mine, and dada here like my children and them. When they're born, they hear born and they had a ras in the head one time as the born. That's what they call dada here. Right? Those are your original bloodlines. Never it was straight. Let me do this then. On the planet, all the flora behind me stands this way, upright, upright. All the grass on the ground, as you can see right here, right there, all of them upright. Even lawn, once you leave it, it is grow upright. So it stands to reason that the beings on them who represent the planet, the flora would be going upright. There is only one people on the planet who flora goes upright. And that's the original people, my people. From the time you have straight, and I'm going to do this too as well. Go and dig up something called taxonomy in science. In taxonomy, there could never be two characteristics that is called the same thing. For instance, you cannot call this here and call what he have on his head here. In science, that would not make sense. In taxonomy, that would not make sense because they have two different characteristics. This stands off my head and that is lying down flank and lank on his head. The two cannot be called here. Right? In science. Not me making this up, I born just the other day. Right? So therefore, One should be called here and the other should be called what we seen accustomed. You see dogs have it, we see cats have it, we see goats have it, we see most animal has fur that is lank on their body. So one is here and one is fur. Let me be real, right? Hence the reason why only one group of people could show up with hirsutism. That is here all over the body, out of the nose, on the shoulder, on the chest, all over the body, right? That is because it is fur. This is here, and it only goes in certain regions of the body, right? And that is the difference between beings. And that is why it was a sin back then to allow them to come into our tribes. It was seen as bestiality, right? So that is what caused the tribal wars. So I drift a real far away off the topic, but let me just go back on the topic. These guys, they're telling you who they are, were actually descendants of ancient East Hindus in the Americas, right? In 1990, all right, let me get the three. In 1989, 1991, the United Nations embarked on a next gig, right? The United Nations embarked on a gig to give quote unquote indigenous people like ID numbers, right? In 1990 or 1991, seeing that was happening around the world under a PNM-led government. And that's what I'm saying. Trinidad and Tobago is the illegal entity and terrorist organization on the land. So they don't care what government in power, they all commit genocide against the indigenous people. So under PNM-led administration, within these 3 years, 89, 90, and 91, they installed this guy as the representation for indigenous on this land, right? When he is not, and he is telling you he is not. He tell you his ancestors come across the Bering Strait from 17,000 years ago. This land, Kairi, is way older than 17,000 years old, right? And when they came, they met people here, looking just like me, right? And that is why we still exist. Because truth be told, in science, the original bloodline, nobody else, we have a talk down here, say, what they say, only quote unquote, people like me could make other people races back pure and nobody else could do it. We know that for a fact down here. I have a brethren who have a stepdaughter who here is totally straight, who looks totally Hindu, and her mother looks just like me. Right? I sure it have 100 different examples people could draw on. Right? So only we can make people back pure, and it could never happen the other way around. A Hindu woman could never make me back pure. A Chinese woman could never make me back pure. And a carbon recessive woman can't make me back pure. Right? However, a carbon dominant female or a female like myself, she can make back a pure Chinese, she can make back a pure Hindu, and she can make back a pure carbon recessive person. Right? So that means our genetics is the codex for what quote unquote humanity. We don't deal with humanity, human mean monster, right? But since that is the word every layman understand, that is what we're talking about, right? But basically, we are the original people. The original people never had straight fur, right? This guy is telling you that his ancestors came here 17,000 years ago. My ancestors make here. For his ancestors, 17,000 years ago, they didn't come and put a foot on something called land. My ancestors made that, right? But because now we have a government that is against indigenous people, the PNM-led version of it installed that guy, right, as the Santa Rosa First Peoples chief. Now let me break down this name. You know I love to do that. Santa Rosa. Santa is saint. Rosa is rose. Saint Rose, we don't know nothing about her. Indigenous people are concerned about no saint. On the placard in Arena, as you're going through the back, there's a placard on the left by some cashew tree, a nice placard. It's fading now, and they have no interest in putting it back because, as I started highlighted now, it's becoming a problem. But on the placard, it says that the indigenous was fighting against Islam and Christianity. So how the royal hell this guy could come and call the first people of this land people of Saint Rose? Does that make any sense to anybody? It should not. So clearly we have, again, the government promoting genocide against the copper-tone woolly-head indigenous, the real indigenous of this land, not these people. Right? Oh, and let me knock your medicine man one time before I continue. Mr. Medicine Man Belix, right, is claiming that this guy is who the real deal is. But Belix, let me hit you something now. You see how you supposed to be the medicine man at the Santa Rosa community, and then when the pandemic bust the other day, you went and take a bioweapon injection. You supposed to be the medicine man. You supposed to be quote unquote descendant to Hyarima. All the men playing games. And it's only because on social media I ain't really telling you my mind. Right? But the reality is, from the time you take that bioweapon job, you can't claim nothing. You're owned by Pfizer, Moderna, what's the next one? AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson. Whoever you take the job from, that is who own you. You have no indigenous claim, brethren. So move away. Move out of people way. And go and try to maintain your health and flush that out of your system. Right? Instead of trying to say that we people who look like me is not indigenous. Right? But these people who came from India, right, supposed to be indigenous, but the men them telling all that they're not indigenous. Something wrong with all the brain, right? And everybody else on the island who look like me and calling yourself African, something wrong with your brain too, right? Go and find for me. Look, them fellas and them only here 180 years, but look the name of the boat here. Wait. Fatel Rozak, what they have here. Fatel Rozak. Name for me one slave ship. As a matter of fact, just give me the letter from one of the name on one of the slave ships that bring any African here. Can't happen, can't do it. Right? So the reality of the fact of the matter is they come and meet people like me here. Dr. Nicole Gonzalez, the anthropologist, states that when they came here, people with the hair like fiber as if it can cork ship. Could you use this to cork a ship? Could you use this on top here to cork a ship? No. But you could use this. Right? That's who they met when they came here. These people and them, because we was asleep for some time, and because people like Manning and them is up underneath the Krong, or was, because you dead now, and all governments is an extension of the Krong in England. All the think all the independence, hear this. The highest court of appeal is not even saying down on your land, but all the think all the independent. Go and tell me which part the Privy Council is, right? But all the independent. So basically, the government is an extension of England. Right? And all this what happening here is England implementing this because to sideline the real original indigenous people so that these people, again, as I tell all these identity heist. So these people and them could come now and claim some sort of something here. Brethren, you could have come here 17,000 years ago or 17 million years ago, you have no claims to here because guess what? If you come 17 million years ago and come and meet it, that means somebody make it, ain't? Right. We make this place. Cool? So for all of you confused and studying about this one and how this man had that type of hair and calling himself, is because all it was being taught the wrong thing all the time. Because look, he confessing here. Right? Whether he mixed with we And even if he mixed with we, he came sit down in a leadership position. Because we never used to do that long time. In ancient time. In ancient time, a half-blood could have never sit in the leadership position. Right? He's named a half-blood. He barely making three-quarter. Right? So they saying Christopher Columbus described them with brown skin, straight black hair. Christopher Columbus is a clown. Right? That's the ones who he wanted to go to. Right? And in other renditions in his own journal, he had said about the nappy-head ones too. Who could, right, were actually descendants. So they're telling you here they were actually descendants of ancient East Indians who came into the Americas. Barut is also the name of the first indentured immigrant from India to set foot on Kairi from the ship Fat El Rozak, which landed on May 30th, 1845. Barut represents the second wave of migrants to arrive in the Americas from India, and Ricardo Barrat represents the first band of migrants from India. How the hell Patrick Manning, right, could install this guy? How the hell Penelope Beckles, every time it's October, she just put a trove or something on her shoulder and riding with these people. She ain't nappy here, right? But you riding with this guy as your leader, right? All these things are psyop to promote and continue the identity theft, right? They are all guilty of genocide, and that's why I'm making these records. This has nothing to do really, by the way, I'd like to include people into the information, but this has nothing really to do with people. This have to do with the powers that were committing genocide and watching to see if we would sit down and take it, and this has to do with me not sitting down and taking it. Alright? I am here to set the record straight. We are fed up of the lies, we are fed up of the misrepresentation, and we are fed up of the identity heist. So now I am calling them out. Right? Ricardo Barrat, you are imposter and a participant in genocide against the real indigenous people. Right? And so is Trinidad and Tobago and all the elements, Kamla Posal Bisessa, Rowley no they no more, Penelope Beckles, all of them are imposters, and they are not separate, they are all friends working against us, the indigenous, and creating for you an illusion that they separate. Right? So people, again, this is the evidence, look, they're telling on themselves, right? If you look like me, wake up, right? You could only be mixed with African if you're young, recently. Right? You're wrong my age, there is no African in your bloodline. Right? It is called the American India. Down here we say Luka Kairi. In the north they say Niji. Right? But down here, from Haiti to down here, we recognize each other as Luka Kairi. Right? These guys are not us. They were never us and never will be us. Right? Saint Rose has nothing to do with indigenous people. As a matter of fact, my ancestors killed saints, right? And it is recorded, right? So that has nothing to do with indigenous people. And all the other splinter groups who feel like indigenous is something we could just run and itch up in because it has no structure. My presence now is letting you know that it have a structure, because as soon as it rise up, I will light your fire. Once it didn't reach this level by the proper procedure, because indigenous has structure, right? I didn't happen and wake up and turn the chief, right? This is an elected due position by, is an elected position by due members of my peers, right? Apart from having the blood right and the birth right, right? So you do itch up just so and jump out and become a chief, right? That do happen. Just like no group of girl could jump out nowhere and say them is indigenous matriarch running the land. Them things do happen. But because people lack knowledge, all these things are happening on the land and everybody, hey, this, that. Right, we come to set the record straight and tape and lock all that down, all that stupidity. These guys are not indigenous. These are indigenous imposters and backed by the government. Right? If you were not appointed by me as a chief on the land, you are not a chief, and I will not recognize you as one. right? You could jump high and jump low all day as a chief and talk all the way talking about, just make sure me don't see you, because I will light your fire same way, with facts and evidence. This is a non-violent thing, right? I so happen to have a serious weapon that affects a whole lot of things that is not combustible, is not based on firepower, right? Or is it? Solar plex, any other higher levels. But what we're stating is this: the reality of the fact of the matter is the copper tone, woolly head, hey, you see that guy? Look at him. He look like any of you here straight? This is a virgin from the north. But these are the indigenous people, right? So again, I mean, I kind of run unorthodox, and I'll be doing it like this for now, for a while, because people are accustomed to the soft version of me, to the palatable version of me. It's about hard stuff to come out now, because the time is now, right? So without further ado, again, I actually dive into the research with the quote-unquote Nelson Island. So I would be coming up with a name very soon, and that is that. But in the future, this is how things is going to be done. There is only one indigenous, one copper tone, one woolly head indigenous, one indigenous. Anything mixed is fans of the indigenous. And if you mix and you want to identify it as an indigenous, make sure one of we could stand up and say, that is my son, my daughter, whatnot, and what have you. Long time, it was a this to a certain type of hair. We now find out that them three type of hair is the mark of the original bloodline, right? Long time to be a certain complexion was a this, and red this and red that used to play. Now this complexion running things now, right? So that's just the reality. It was a game they was playing, and now the whole thing switched wrong. And I here just to narrate you through it and point out certain things and give it a set structure. Obviously, I wouldn't put that online, but give it a set structure how the tribe's supposed to be running. Everything else is imposters. One Kairi, one Alubera, one Tamanakos, one Kumanagotes, one Chemas, and one Arawakai. Right? 4 tribes, you come together as a or as a tribal union, right? And that's where you get Kairi and Alubera indigenous people. These 4 tribes form that. The 4 tribes that wore Christopher Columbus, Fernando Zarco Salvador when he came to here, right? And the same 4 tribes that carried the war to 1797. And then, as recorded by the Mordaunt Lawrence Fraser, keep getting this man's name wrong, in the document, they move to the inner parts of the island. In primary school, you know what they tell me? All of them dead. If it wasn't for my mother who keep ponging in my head, boy, you hear like that because you are Caribbean, and obviously she didn't know better. Caribbean and Arawak was the turn, right? If it wasn't for my mother, I would have been believing that nonsense. And then afterwards, I went and met my grandmother and her family and all that type of stuff and realized we were always in Tamana. We locked Tamana and Santa Cruz, right? What they call in Santa Cruz now. But Tamana, my bloodline, is literally Tamanacos or Tamanaks, right? We are those people, right? So again, this is what happens when you have so much things in your head and they all connected. I can't really pull a topic without touching certain things. So thanks for being with me with that. And I look forward to seeing you again, to drop in some truths and continue to maintain the setting of the record straight. I am Chief Waab, Chief of the Tamanacos, the Chemas, the Arawakai, and the Kumanagotes, Chief of Kairi and Alubera Islands. Tamunafo said, Ika, Siya, Wadu.